Grýla. I want to read out of this book here now because I was remember back when I was a little girl growing up in Iceland, and I remember how I was very, very careful to be very good at Christmas time and not misbehave, because I knew if I misbehaved, then Grýla would be there and she would come and get me and maybe have her Jólakötturinn, which is Jólakötturinn in Icelandic, and the Jólakötturinn would come with the Grýla, and the two of them would come and get me if I was naughty. So I was really super, super good at Christmas time. But this is the story, the Icelandic story about Grýla and the Jólakötturinn. The Christmas cat is what it was called. In the far mountains of Iceland, way up in the north, there's a place that no one dares to go. There are no roads, just a path worn from the feet of sheep and a few other creatures. There are steep cliffs and rocky parts, all filled with caves and hidden places. This is a home to no one particular troublesome and terrible troll. Her name is Grýla, and she is a hideous creature, a half ogre and a half troll. She and her troll husband Leppaludir lived in Dimmuborgir, Lavafield, with their many children. Like most trolls, she was mean and bad-tempered. She slobbered and snorted and she smelled bad and was generally unpleasant in every way imaginable. But she was also known in the troll world to be a wonderful cook. Other trolls made any excuse to visit and stay for dinner, often requesting a particular dish, her specialty. She was most famous for her bad kids stew. Can you imagine? She spent most of her time searching for and collecting the main ingredients for her famous stew, bad children. She looked for the laziest, my page is stuck together here, the laziest one who didn't do chores and gave their parents trouble, or the children that played mean pranks. Grýla had a special skill in finding these children. She had 13 ears on each side of her head, which gave her excellent hearing, even across very far distances, and she could hear the moaning and groaning and the complaints of lazy children who didn't want to do their chores. Sometimes she would go herself, and sometimes she would send one of her troll children to snatch this human child out. They would be careful not to be seen, stuffing the child into a sack and to carry back to the mountain where Grýla would keep him in a cave prison until she made her bad kids stew. Grýla often could not go get all the bad children because the nights in Iceland are so short in the summertime, and any troll caught out in the sunlight would turn to a rock, so they could only move the country for a few hours at darkness each night. For all those lazy children they couldn't get to, Grýla would carefully write their names down so she could find and steal them in the fall and the winter. They had most time to collect the bad children during the long night of December. Soon, 13 of her Grýla troll boys would become known as the Jólalad, because they came to the villages around Christmas. But many times, Grýla went alone to collect bad children for her stew pot. She was often seen in the moonlight, dragging a sack closely followed by a monstrous-looking cat. The stories of Grýla's horrible ugliness were legendary. Everyone seemed to see her just a little bit differently. Some said that she had hoofs where her feet should have been and ran hunched over. Others said that she had 15 tails that stuck out in every direction from under her skirt. Still others described a face covered with warts and a crooked smile showing 3 rotting teeth. But all the stories had one thing in common. She always wore an odd-looking hood that covered her head and hung down around her shoulder, stopping just at the top of her arm. It was much too big to be a scarf, and far too short to be a proper cloak. One cold winter night, Grýla was out to fill her bag with a few mean children. She was planning to have company for dinner the next week and wanted to serve her bad kids stew. Her pet walked by her side. The ugly little animal had its own special way of sniffing out the laziest children. He would lurk around after the sheep round up every fall, waiting for the shearer. Grýla always sent him to steal wool so she wouldn't have to shear her own sheep. Grýla wore many clothes with a magical protection and needed a lot of. The cat would watch for unguarded barks and steal as many as he could. He noted that everyone helped with the shearing or worked with the wool in the yard or cloth was rewarded with new clothes just before Christmas. So Grýla cat liked to find the children who didn't get new clothes at Christmas because those were the laziest. All he had to do around Christmas was to look for those who wore old clothes. Because of this, he soon became known as Jólakötturinn, or the Christmas cat. On this winter night, Grýla and the Christmas cat had visited the home of two lazy children, stealing them from their bed and tossing them in bags, and Grýla carried over her shoulder. She was tired and decided to collect only one more for the night and would make good stew for a company dinner. They tramped along and soon arriving at a small house at the foot of the mountain. Jólakötturinn, or the Christmas cat, ran up the side of the turf roof and down into the wooden smoke hole. Jumping down on the table inside, he used his nose to push open the window for Grýla to reach inside. The cat jumped outside as Grýla reached toward the sleeping child and snatched her up in one long bony hand. The little girl's eyes flew open, and she instantly knew that it was a horrible ogre Grýla had come to steal her away. Before she could shout a warning and wake up the household, Grýla had pulled her through the window and ran off down the road, and the little girl tucked under her arm. Her long troll legs took huge steps, and in no time they were several miles away from the farmhouse. Grýla stopped and shoved her prize into her bag, but the little girl fought, kicking and punching. And Grýla was very surprised because most children were so frightened they were no trouble at all. This one was different. She wriggled and wrestled, and her little hand flying into Grýla's face. The girl's hand grabbed at Grýla's hood and snatched it off of her head. Shocked, Grýla dropped the other two sacks she had been carrying. Two boys promptly jumped out, joining the fight. Grýla fell to the ground, and all three children ran as fast as they could. The little girl still tightly holding onto the hood. Grýla watched them run, and she sneered, annoyed. The hood had been woven with a very special spin, one that changed her appearance. And when she wore it, everyone saw a horrible monster. It was hardly at all how she normally looked. Without her magic hood, people would see her as an ordinary troll and would not be afraid of her. She might be captured or caught in the sunlight, which would turn her into a stone. Children would no longer be afraid, and instead would shout at her presence or fight back if she tried to steal them. Frustrated at the loss of her bad kid stew in Greenland, and even more upset at the loss of her hood, Grýla had no choice but to return home to the mountain cave. A short time later, her magic spindle was stolen, and she was never able to make a new magic hood. She spent the rest of her days in the mountains, away from anyone who could see her, and never again made bad kids stew. And that was the end of the story of Grýla and the Christmas Cat. And a good ending too.